educational standards in England over the rest of this Parliament. We are committed to building on the reforms of the past 6 years, which have led to 1.4 million more children being taught in good and outstanding schools. But we are not content to stop there. 1.4 million children is a start, but it is not enough. We have to ensure that we deliver a great education to every single child. It's what we owe to the next generation, to give them the tools to realise every ounce of their potential. The White Paper was called Educational Excellence Everywhere for a reason, Mr. Speaker. Because, as I've said before, for me, the everywhere is non-negotiable. In the White Paper, for example, we set out our plans for achieving excellence areas, where we will focus specific resources to tackle entrenched educational underperformance. The White Paper also sets out how we want to see the teaching profession take responsibility for teacher accreditation, tackle unfair funding, build leadership capacity, and set high expectations for every child with a world-leading knowledge-based curriculum. A truly school-led, self-improving system, learning from the best from across the world and preparing the next generation to compete on the global stage. But it's the vision of a fully academised system which has attracted most attention. Over the course of the last few weeks, I've spoken to many honourable members on both sides of the House, as well as to school leaders, governors, local government representatives and parents. What is clear from these conversations is that the strength and importance of academies is widely accepted. There is a clear recognition of the case for putting greater responsibility for the school system in the hands of school leaders. But let me be clear, we firmly believe that schools becoming more autonomous and more directly accountable for their results raises standards. Academies are the vehicle which allows schools and leaders to innovate with the curriculum, have the flexibility to set the pay and conditions for their staff, and bring about greater collaboration with other schools. We still want every school to become an academy by 2022. But we always intended this to be a 6-year process in which good schools should be able to take their own decisions about their future as academies. However, we understand the concerns that have been raised about a hard deadline and legislating for blanket powers to issue academy orders. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I announced on Friday that we have decided it is not necessary to take blanket powers to convert good schools in strong local authorities to academies at this time. In March, a record high of 227 schools chose to apply for academy status, showing clearly where the momentum lies as school leaders, parents, governors and teachers across the country embrace the benefits that being an academy brings. And since then we have also issued more than 104 academy orders to underperforming schools, meaning that the young people in those schools will soon benefit from the strong leadership provided by expert academy sponsors. That is why those who took to the airwaves this weekend to crow about a victory in the battle against rising standards will find themselves sorely disappointed. Mr. Speaker, there will be no retreat from our mission to give every child the best start in life and to build an education system led by school leaders and teachers on the front line, running their own schools as academies. The Education Adoption Act 2016 already enables us to rapidly convert failing schools and schools which are coasting where they can benefit from the support of a strong sponsor. As a result, when schools underperform, it is now easier to respond swiftly and effectively. Schools won't be allowed to languish unchallenged for years. As we set out in the White Paper, and I've subsequently argued, the most pressing need for further powers is to boost standards for those schools languishing in the worst performing local authorities and to provide for schools and local authorities likely to become unviable. So instead of taking a blanket power to convert all schools, we will seek powers in 2 specific circumstances where it is clear that the case for conversion to academy status is pressing. In our worst performing local authorities, we need to take more decisive action so that a new system led by outstanding schools can take their place. Similarly, because of the pace of academisation in some areas, it will become increasingly difficult for local authorities to have the ability to offer schools the necessary support. And there will be a need to ensure these schools are not dependent on an unviable local authority. We will therefore seek provisions to convert schools in the lowest performing and unviable local authorities to academy status. This may involve, in some circumstances, conversion of good and outstanding schools when they haven't chosen to do so themselves. But the need for action in these limited circumstances is clear, because of the considerable risk to the standard of education young people in those schools receive, as the local authorities either unable to guarantee their continued success or support further improvement. We will consult on these arrangements, including the thresholds for performance and viability, and I am making a clear commitment that the definition of thresholds of underperformance and viability will be the subject of an affirmative resolution in this House. I would also like to reassure honourable members on concerns raised about how we protect small schools, particularly those in rural areas. I've already made it clear that no small rural school will close as a result of the move to having more schools becoming academies. There is already a statutory presumption against closure of rural schools, but we will now go further. Where small rural schools are converting to academy status, we will introduce a dual lock to ensure their protection. Both local and national government will have to agree to a school closing before a decision can be made. There will also be dedicated support to help rural primary schools through the process of conversion, and a £10 million fund to secure expert support and advice for them. While we want every school to become an academy, we will not compel successful schools to join multi-academy trusts. In order to share expertise and resource, we expect most schools will form local clusters of multi-academy trusts. But if the leadership of a successful school does not wish to enter a formal relationship with other schools, we trust them to make that decision and will not force them to do so. Small schools will be able to convert to standalone academies as long as they are financially sustainable. Mr. Speaker, I began this statement by saying that our goal has not changed. This government will continue to prioritise the interests of young people in getting the best start in life by having an excellent education over the vested interests who seek to oppose the lifting of standards and the rooting out of educational underperformance. Those very same vested interests who allowed schools to languish for years unchallenged and unchanged until the launch of the Sponsored Academies programme by the last Labour government. Our work to improve our education system will continue apace. We will continue to empower school leaders and raise standards. We will continue to hold high expectations for every child. We will establish a fair national funding formula for schools so that young people everywhere get the funding they deserve. And we will continue to work towards a system where all schools are run and led by the people that know them best, in the way that works for their pupils as academies. These reforms will transform the education system in our country and ensure that we give every child an excellent education so they have the potential, they have the opportunity to fulfil their potential. Mr. Speaker, I commend the statement to the House.
Lucy Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I thank the Secretary of State for advance notice of her statement. It's good to see that despite her best efforts, this U-turn is getting the airing it deserves today. What she announced on Friday was a significant and welcome climb down. However she wants to dress it up, dropping her desire to force all schools to become academies by her arbitrary deadline of 2022 is a key concession. School leaders should take it as a very clear signal that the foot is off their throat and they shouldn't feel they need to jump before being pushed. In achieving this welcome move, can I thank the very broad alliance who joined us in making the arguments. The head teachers who made their collective voice very clear last weekend. Parents, governors, teachers, local government leaders and honourable members from across the House who have made very thoughtful and important interventions over recent weeks. I would have thought, given the scale and breadth of the opposition to her plans and the huge sense of panic and upheaval that they have caused to school leaders, she might have shown a little more humility in her statement today. If I were her, I would at least apologise. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, after her statement today, we're all left even more confused about what her policy actually is. She says her aim remains the same, but without the means. Although the Secretary of State has conceded on the politically daft idea of forcing good and outstanding schools to become academies against their wishes, she still holds the ambitions that all schools will become academies. But yet again, today, she has failed to make a single decent argument as to why this ambition is desirable in the first place. Perhaps this is because, despite her claims to be in listening mode, the Secretary of State has got her fingers in her ears, out of touch with heads, parents and teachers. And she has failed to address the serious concerns raised. Where is her evidence that academisation is the panacea for school improvement? Where's the choice or autonomy or innovation in a one-size-fits-all approach? Is there sufficient capacity and accountability in the academy system to ensure that best practice, not poor practice, is being spread? These questions remain as she seeks further powers to speed up the pace of academisation. On school improvement, she must now take stock of the evidence. The Education Select Committee recommended that she do just that. Sir Michael Wilshaw found serious concerns in many chains. Research by the Sutton Trust found that there is a very mixed picture in performance of academy chains, and there is no evidence at all that academisation in and of itself leads to school improvement. Indeed, analysis published today by the PwC shows that, members might want to listen to this, shows that only 3 of the biggest academy chains get a positive value added rating. And this, I think, is quite a startling statistic, and just 1 of the 26 biggest primary sponsors achieves results above the national average. While there is much excellence, she must not continue making dubious arguments about cause and effect without the evidence. Concerns of a one-size-fits-all policy, as expressed by Councillor Paul Carter, chair of the County Councils Network, still apply, as do those about distant, unaccountable bureaucracies expressed by the Honourable Member for Altrincham Sale West. As Lord Kenneth Baker raised, there are real issues of capacity within multi-academy trusts to take on a new wave of academies. And today, she failed to answer the key questions of parents and their right to remain on governing bodies of academies. But perhaps the biggest concern we all have, Mr. Speaker, is about her direction and her fixation with structures, not standards. Whilst chaos reigns all around her, and while heads are dealing with what they describe as very challenging times, she wants to put all the energies of her department into more structural change, for which there is little evidence, insufficient capacity and inadequate accountability. Wouldn't she be better advised sorting out the utter chaos besetting primary assessment and SATs, or ensuring the massively behind schedule new GCSEs are delivered well and on time? Or how about dealing with the chronic shortages of teachers she's caused? Or getting a proper strategy for local place planning? Or instead of simply doing the Chancellor's bidding, perhaps she could fight for some school budgets which are facing real terms cuts for the first time in 20 years. We all want to see educational excellence everywhere, but the Secretary of State is presiding over a chaotic mess, dragging schools backwards. And her ambitions for further structural change are at best a distraction and at worst will damage standards.